Well, welcome back to Dragon Pugs. My name is L Gregg, and we are reading through my novel, The Sporran, which is where the dragon pugs were invented. We're a long way from finding dragon pugs, I have to tell you, but we are a pretty exciting place because Jacob is on his way to Scotland. If you remember the last episode, we talked about Jacob getting on the plane and heading to Scotland to meet his father. And so that's where we find him right now. It's the middle of the night. He has fallen asleep. His backpack fell onto the floor, causing his attention to be drawn to it. And when he opened up, something was in his Sporran. Something that caused great distress. So that's where we pick up right now. Jacob looked all around. No one seemed to be watching. Mrs. Wiley was still asleep. He even unbuckled his seatbelt to stand and look behind him. Almost everyone he could see was asleep. No one had seen, he realized with some relief as he sunk back down into his seat. Now what do I do? What is that? Is that what I thought it was? Could it be? I must have been mistaken, right? Am I losing my mind? He puzzled and wondered and worried. Mustering his courage, he reached for his backpack again. Slowly, he lifted the Sporran to the light and saw it exactly as he thought he had. He slammed it shut again and zipped the backpack up tight as it would go. Jacob's fear was racing. A missing baseball, an appearing cricket ball. Yes, those are one thing, but now, what do I do now? He repeated the phrase again and again under his breath, while his eyes darted back and forth in his head as his skin grew clammy and cold. Should I waken Mrs. Wiley? No, she's too old, and maybe her heart couldn't take the scare. Should I tell the flight attendant? Yes, she was nice and would understand. No. She wouldn't understand. No one would understand. Jacob decided he had better take one more look himself before bringing anyone else into this mess with him. But what if it got out? What if it escaped in the plane? What if it ran to the cockpit and scared the pilot, causing a crash or something? It's too risky. I'll have to come up with a plan to do this right. What would Jenny do? What would Jenny do? Jacob repeated it under his breath. Of course, it hit him as perfectly reasonable. Jenny is always in the bathroom. She would go to the bathroom to open it. Jacob looked all around and saw the lavatory just to the rear of his section was open. He put the Sporran over his left shoulder, holding the flap down tight. How do I get over the sleeping Mrs. Wiley, however? He was puzzled and looked around. Jacob stood on his seat and stretched his left leg far out over the arm of Mrs. Wiley's seat on the aisle. Balancing precariously with one foot on his seat and one on Mrs. Wiley's armrest, he knew it would be all over if he fell flat on the old lady and lost control of the Sporran. He couldn't let it happen. Not at 30,000 feet, with nowhere to run. The young acrobat prepared to make his move. He shifted his weight from his right foot to his left just as a strong hand grabbed his arm. Jacob grasped and turned. Shh, it's all right. Just here to help, said Kelly, the stewardess, as she steadied his weight and motioned him into the aisle. Nice of you not to want to wake the lady, she whispered. Thank you, said Jacob as he started back toward the bathroom. Inside, he quickly locked the door behind him and took a big breath of relief as he leaned against the door. One hurdle down. But now it could get ugly. Still half hoping his tired eyes had played a trick on him, he peeked into the Sporran. There, yes, no mistake about it. A tiny hand was emerging from the darkness. He slammed it shut again. For a few minutes he stood trying to get up the courage to do what he knew he would have to do. Open the bag and let out whatever was in there. And then deal with what would happen next. The Sporran was lying on the stainless steel sink, flap side up. Jacob took a pen from his back pocket. He started to jump back toward the door even before he flipped the Sporran open. The pouch opened with a flap and its 3 dangling tassels lying in the sink. Nothing. Nothing came out. Nothing moved. Jacob gave a quick smack to the old leather bottom of the Sporran, which then spilled its contents into the sink. He heard himself let out a little squeal as he saw lying in the sink, staring back at him, a tiny little woman. She had black hair and wore a rather normal-looking dress, but no shoes. Jacob pressed himself hard against the door, as far away as he could get in that tiny little airplane toilet. Racing 1,000,000 miles a minute, Jacob's mind prepared him for what would happen next. Maybe she would say she was a genie, here to do my bidding. Maybe she would just turn me to stone with a look. Maybe she would say something like, "Greetings, master of the Sporran." Nothing. Nothing happened. She just stared back from the sink, and Jacob stared back as if transfixed. She held him in her power with an unblinking, empty stare. Knock, knock. The sounds of knuckles gently rapping at the door broke the power of the trance. "Are you okay?" It was the voice of Kelly, the stewardess. I'm fine, thanks," he replied. He slowly approached the sink and the thing that was using it as a seat or a bed or something. "Hello?" Jacob said, as more of a question than a greeting. There was no reply. Nothing. "Do you speak English?" he asked. Silence. "My name is Jacob. What's yours?" Silence. "Okay, I really need to get back to my seat now." Still nothing in reply from the woman. She did not release her cold, empty stare. He approached and extended his hand as gently as he could, as if he was greeting an angry porcupine. A foot away, 6 inches, 3 inches, 1 inch, almost touching, and still nothing. Expecting he might lose a finger, or worse in the process, he closed his eyes and touched the lady. "What?" he said aloud as he opened his eyes. "What is going on?" He put his hands around the lady in a scene that reminded him of an old movie he once saw on Saturday afternoon with his dad, though he was not a giant ape climbing the Empire State Building. You might remember that movie. It was an old movie called King Kong. She was not soft and flesh-like at all. She was a doll. Dang! A stupid doll. He shook the doll as if it were its fault that he had been through the biggest panic attack of his life, and then he shoved it in his front pocket. Back at his seat, he was relieved to see Mrs. Wiley was awake. She could let him pass without more gymnastics to get back in the seat. Angry and exhausted from the tension, he put the doll in his backpack and stared out the window until he could again fall asleep. Wow. That would be a pretty scary thing to happen in the middle of the night for what looked like a small woman to appear in your Sporran, in your backpack, right? Well, it was only a doll. Well, I wonder where that came from. Just like the cricket ball. Where did it come from? Where did the baseball go? Don't know. Though we may be coming close to an answer. Because the next chapter is called Into the Kingdom of Fife. The early morning sun shot brightly through the blinds left partly open in the night. The plane was nearly to its destination. As the passengers slowly awoke from their slumber, the bright orange sun began to dim. Having been flying above the clouds, the plane gave a false impression of conditions on the ground. Dipping below the clouds, the sun was replaced by a steady rain pelting the windows. From the pilot's announcement that they would soon be landing, Mrs. Wiley came to life again and began to nervously chatter with Jacob. This time, however, Jacob was not in the mood to hear about her grandchildren, especially not about precious little Susie, the 2-year-old genius from Missouri. Jacob was still angry about what he saw as the dirty trick that happened the night before. Why that doll? Why was it so real? Darn it, I was scared, he thought to himself. But he still managed to be pleasant to Mrs. Wiley, and they parted wishing each other the best on their vacations. Mrs. Wiley would be spending a week in London doing typically touristy things like visiting Stonehenge and Big Ben and Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. It was 7:30 a.m. in London, though it was still the middle of the night back home, and according to Jacob's very tired body. He spotted a McDonald's in the airport. I think people call this comfort food, he sighed as he went over to order some breakfast with the English money he and his mother had exchanged at the airport when he left home. He would now take another plane north from London to Edinburgh, the capital of Scotland, and from there a train north and eastward to St. Andrews and his father. He was pleasantly surprised when the nice steward on the next plane brought him what would for him be a second breakfast partway through the flight, complete with a real cup, white ceramic with a handle and everything, of hot tea. Not some paper cup or cheap plastic like the American flights he had been on. His mother had taught him to drink tea on cold afternoons with pancakes back home. And he had read how the English loved to drink tea, so he thoroughly enjoyed his first very English moment. Before breakfast had arrived, Jacob had fingered the old Sporran and gave it another look over before replacing it in his backpack. He put a couple of American coins in the pouch that he found that were still left in his pocket. No use to me over here anyway, he thought. The tea brought back his typically good mood, and even if it was still raining, he was looking forward to seeing his father in just a few more hours. When the steward had cleared his tray, he reached down into his backpack to retrieve a book, but decided to check the Sporran as well. Opening the flap, he noticed that nothing was there. He expected those coins to be there. Why weren't they? Nothing had ever disappeared this quickly before. It's been only about an hour since I put in the 2 quarters and a nickel in there. Previously, things took all night to appear or disappear. He rummaged through the bottom of his backpack to make sure they hadn't fallen out. They weren't there. He put a pencil in the pouch and put it away. He checked every 20 minutes or so, and it disappeared about an hour later. In its place was an English pound, a rather small coin, but one worth about 5 American quarters. By this time, his flight was over, and it was time to leave the plane and catch a taxi to the train station. The taxi was the strangest car he had ever been in. Purplish black in color. Its back seat had leg room enough for a giant. If he were younger, he might even imagine that giants who lived in these parts took taxi rides. Two little seats folded down on the in the backs of the front seats, giving room for at least 6 people his size, maybe more. The driver, as all drivers in England and Scotland are wont to do, drove on the right side of the car and the left side of the road, which Jacob found very peculiar, even if he was expecting it, because he'd seen it in movies. Settling himself into a seat on the train at Rob Roy Station in Edinburgh, he opened the Sporran to find a different pencil had replaced the one he had put into it a few hours before. This one seemed made from something like paper, not wood, and had no eraser. He took it and, like he did with everything that appeared from beyond through his Sporran, he sealed it in a plastic bag in his backpack, put just in case they were somehow contaminated from an alien and noxious world. Jacob was running out of things he was willing to send to another dimension, likely never to see again. But it was getting more exciting with the quickness of disappearances and appearances. It's as if the Sporran is gaining strength as it reaches its homeland or something. This is what Jacob was thinking. But if that's the case, what will happen next? What if it's gaining power and I refuse to feed it? What if things get even weirder? What if it gains the power to make me disappear? Well, he couldn't let himself worry about all that now. He settled on just sending the napkin that he still had from his second breakfast that morning. It couldn't have been more than half an hour from the airplane napkin, and the airplane napkin was gone. In its place was a small slip of paper with numbers on it. A dumb receipt, he thought to himself. Wait, they have receipts in other dimensions too? He sat thinking as he watched the scenery go by, complete with sheep and cattle, though to his disappointment, not the really hairy cows he had seen in the guidebooks for Scotland and in postcards from his dad. They were just normal-looking cows. You ever see those hairy cows in Scotland? They're really cool. They've got long red hair, usually reddish hair, and big horns. In Scotland, they call them hairy coos. Very coos. They were just normal-looking cows, though, the ones that he saw, just like in America. A shadow of wings passed quickly across the field to his left, and he watched it without thinking to look up. A plane, he thought. But the shadow and the thing making it turned and followed the train as it moved north. Wings following the train. Jacob now held the Sporran in his lap, as if perhaps by holding it he could maintain control of it and keep it from gaining more power. When next he opened the flap, he was shocked at what he found. Inside the pouch was a ticket, and not just any ordinary or random ticket. Jacob immediately recognized it as a matching ticket of his own. He pulled it from his pocket. He looked at his and looked at it. Yes, a match, the same color, the same trip. Edinburgh to Leuchars. The same date. Everything. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. This ticket came from somewhere on this very train. His hands began to sweat and his heart began to race at the possible implications. Is the Sporran now taking over the train? Is its magic growing outward and encompassing the other passengers? Will I ever be allowed off this ride? Or maybe the Sporran is just an instrument of a larger and more ominous power that is also on this train with me. His mind was jumping from one fear to another. Jacob stood and looked around his train car. There was an Asian family directly behind him. They looked unthreatening, Across the aisle was an elderly couple, and behind them was a group of 4 girls and 2 boys who looked like college students and their teacher on a trip. They all seemed safe enough. He sat back down and huddled with his thoughts for a moment more, and he heard the door open behind him. It was a sliding electric door connecting his car to the one behind it. A cold chill came over him. A tingling pulse ran down his right arm. He had felt something like that sensation several times in the last few days, but never this intense. Before we go on, I'll just back up for just a second and talk about that group that he saw. Saw an elderly couple across the aisle. Behind him was a group of 4 girls and 2 boys who looked like college students and their teacher on a trip. That was me and my 6 companions, my 6 college students that went on this train trip from Edinburgh to Leuchars. Now I've broken that wall. I and my students from the McConnell Center are in the book, are in the story, are on the train. Footsteps came up the aisle behind him, and suddenly he felt a hard pull on his arms. His body swung down toward the floor. What? It was being pulled downward by his backpack with the Sporran inside. Jacob struggled with his pack for a moment as he remained stuck down in his seat. Then, just as quickly as it had pulled him down, he released his hands. As he sat back up, the door just ahead of him was closing as a tall man in a wide hat passed him into the next car. He couldn't help but wonder if the Sporran had just helped him escape some danger he didn't even know he was in. Jacob was very glad when the train ground to a halt at the very small rural station with the sign Leuchars on the wall outside. This was the station that serviced the town of St. Andrews in the area of Scotland known as the Kingdom of Fife. Jacob quickly gathered his things and hurried off the train with about 24 other passengers. None of them looked particularly threatening as he turned to see his father waiting down by the road. He hoped the train would take with it whatever strange power he had come close to in that car. Wow, that's probably the most danger Jacob has been in yet. Or maybe it's danger, maybe it's not. But Jacob has a suspicion, has a feeling something bad was near him. And the Sporran that pulled him down beneath his seat may very well have saved him. I don't know. We may find out a little bit later. The next chapter is called Reunion, which he will be reunited with his father in St. Andrews. And the chapter after that is called A Stranger at Home. So then we'll go back and see what's going on with Will and Jenny and Jacob's mom back home before we come back to Scotland. So again, that'll be it for right now. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Hope you're enjoying it. Keep up with your own reading, whatever it is, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.